silver to the port. Here we stopped a short time to admire the beautiful bridge thrown over the river Antigua, with its stone arches, which brought Mrs. Ward's sketch to my recollection, though it is very long since I saw the book. We were accompanied by the commander of the fort. It is now a peaceful looking scene. We walked to the bridge, pulled branches of large white flowers, admired the rapid river dashing over the rocks, and the fine bold scenery that surrounds it. The village is a mere collection of huts with some fine trees. It was difficult to believe, as we journeyed on, that we were now in the midst of December. The air was soft and balmy, the heat, without being oppressive, that of a July day in England. The road through a succession of woody country, trees covered with every variety of blossom, and loaded with the most delicious tropical fruits. Flowers of every colour filling the air with fragrance, and the most fantastical profusion of parasitical plants intertwining the branches of the trees, and flinging their bright blossoms over every bough. Palms, cocoas, oranges, lemons, succeeded one another, and at one turn of the road, down in a lovely green valley, we caught a glimpse of an Indian woman, with her long hair, resting under the shade of a lofty tree, beside a running stream, an oriental picture. Had it not been for the dust and the jolting, nothing could have been more delightful. As for Don Miguel, with his head out of the window, now desiring the coachman to go more quietly, now warning us to prepare for a jolt, now pointing out everything worth looking at, and making light of difficulties, he was the very best conductor of a journey I ever met with. His hat of itself was a curiosity to us, a white beaver with immense brim, lined with thick silver tissue, with two large silver rolls and tassels round it. One circumstance must be observed by all who travel in Mexican territory. There is not one human being or passing object to be seen that is not in itself a picture, or which would not form a good subject for the pencil. The Indian women, with their plaited hair, and little children slung to their backs, their large straw hats and petticoats of two colours, the long strings of arrieros, with their loaded mules, and swarthy, wild-looking faces, the chance horseman who passes with his sarape of many colours, his high ornamented saddle, Mexican hat, silver stirrups, and leathern boots, this is picturesque. Salvator Rosa and Hogarth might have travelled more to advantage, hand in hand, Salvator for the sublime, and Hogarth taking him up where the sublime became the ridiculous. At La Calera we had a distant view of the sea. Occasionally we stopped to buy oranges fresh from the trees, pineapples and granaditas, which are like Brobdingnagian gooseberries, the pulp enclosed in a very thick yellow or green rind, and very refreshing. It was about 7 in the evening when, very dusty, rather tired, but very much enchanted with all we had seen, we arrived at Plan del Rio. Here the diligence passengers generally stop for the night, that is, sleep a few hours on a hard bed, and rise at midnight to go on to Jalapa. But to this arrangement I for one made vociferous objections, and strongly insisted upon the propriety and feasibility of sleeping at Jalapa that night. Don Miguel, the most obsequious of dons, declared that it should be exactly as the Señora ordered. Accordingly, it was agreed that we should wait for the moon, and then pursue our journey, and meanwhile we walked out a short distance to see the bridge, the river, and the wood. The bridge consists of a single large arch thrown over the river, and communicating with a great high road, formerly paved, but now going to ruin. We returned to the inn, a long row of small rooms, built of brick and prettily situated, not far from the water. Here we had the luxury of water and towels, which enabled us to get rid of a certain portion of dust before we went to supper. The diligence from Jalapa has just deposited at the inn a German with his wife and child, he bearing so decidedly the stamp of a German musician that we at once guessed his calling. They are from Mexico, from whence the fine arts seem to be taking their flight, and gave a most woeful account of the road between this and Jalapa. We had a very tolerable supper; soup, fish, fowls, steak, and frijoles, all well seasoned with garlic and oil. The jolting had given me too bad a headache to care for more than coffee. We were strongly advised to remain the night there, but lazy people know too well what it is to rise in the middle of the night, especially when they are much fatigued, and when the moon rose, we packed ourselves once more into the diligence, sufficiently refreshed to encounter new fatigues. The moon was very bright, and most of the party prepared themselves for sleep, with cigars in their mouths; not a very easy matter, for the roads were infamous, a succession of holes and rocks. As we were gradually ascending, the weather became cooler, and from cool began to grow cold, forcing us to look out for cloaks and shawls. We could now discern some change in the vegetation, or rather a mingling of the trees of a colder climate with those of the tropics, especially the Mexican oak, which begins to flourish here. Fortunately, at one part of the road, the moon enabled us to see the captain of the escort lying on the ground fast asleep, his horse standing quietly beside him, he having fallen off while asleep, and continued his nap. The soldiers shook him up with some difficulty. At Carralf also we changed mules, and from the badness of the road continued to go slowly. The cold increased, and at last by the moonlight we had a distinct view of the Peak of Orizava, with his white nightcap on (excuse the simile, suggested by extreme sleepiness), the very sight enough to make one shiver. As we approached Jalapa, the scene was picturesque. The escort had put on their sarapes, and with their high helmets and feathers went galloping along and dashing amongst the trees and shrubs. Orizava and the Cofre de Perote shone white in the distance, while a delicious smell of flowers, particularly of roses, gave token of the land through which we were passing. It was nearly 2 in the morning when we reached Jalapa, tired to death and shivering with cold. Greatly we rejoiced as we rattled through its mountainous streets, and still more when we found ourselves in a nice clean inn, with brick floors and decent small beds, and everything prepared for us. The sight of a fire would have been too much luxury, however, they gave us some hot tea, and very shortly after, I at least can answer for myself, that I was in bed and enjoying the most delightful sleep that I have had since I left New York. This morning, the diligence being at our disposal, we did not rise by break of day, but, on the contrary, continued to sleep till 8 o'clock. I was waited on by such a nice, civil, clean little old woman, that I should like to carry her off with me. Meanwhile, various authorities of the town were stationed at the door to give C n welcome when he should appear. Our breakfast was delicious. Such fresh eggs and fresh butter, and good coffee, and well fried chickens; moreover, such good bread, and peculiarly excellent water, that we fell very much in love with Jalapa. After breakfast we walked out, accompanied by various gentlemen of the place. The town consists of little more than a few steep streets, very old, with some large and excellent houses, the best as usual belonging to English merchants, and many to those of Vera Cruz, who come to live in or near Jalapa during the reign of the vomito. There are some old churches, a very old convent of Franciscan monks, and a well supplied market place. Everywhere there are flowers, roses creeping over the old walls, Indian girls making green garlands for the Virgin and saints, flowers in the shops, flowers at the windows, but above all, everywhere one of the most splendid mountain views in the world. The Cofre de Perote, with its dark pine forests and gigantic chest, a rock of porphyry which takes that form, and the still loftier snow white peak of Orizava, tower above all the others, seeming like the colossal guardians of the land. The intervening mountains, the dark cliffs and fertile plains, the thick woods of lofty trees clothing the hills and the valleys, a glimpse of the distant ocean, the surrounding lanes shaded by fruit trees, aloes, bananas, chirimoyas, mingled with the green liquidambar, the flowering myrtle, and hundreds of plants and shrubs and flowers of every colour and of delicious fragrance, all combined to form one of the most varied and beautiful scenes that the eye can behold. Then Jalapa itself, so old and gray and rose becovered, with a sound of music issuing from every open door and window, and a soft and agreeable temperature, presents, even in a few hours, a series of agreeable impressions, not easily effaced. But we are now returned to our inn, for it is near noon, and the veil of clouds that earlier in the morning enveloped Orizava has passed away, leaving its white summit environed by a flood of light. I shall probably have no opportunity of writing until we reach Puebla. Puebla, 24th. Yesterday morning we took leave of the Jalapeños, and once more found ourselves en route. Such a view of the mountains as we ascended this steep road, and such flowers!